Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. A millionaire father hires a nanny for his disabled son. What he sees on camera shocks him. In a huge modern villa perched on the hills of Los Angeles, Ethan Miller, a millionaire father, lived alone with his son, Liam, aged 8. Since a tragic accident 2 years earlier, Liam had become motor disability and could no longer walk. From that day on, Ethan had done everything to make his son happy, except for one thing: to be present. Caught up in his business and his personal grief, the loss of his wife in the accident, Ethan no longer had the energy to stay home. He hired a succession of nannies, all handsomely paid, but none stayed for more than a few weeks. Liam was gentle, but fragile, and did not cope well with the strangers who came and went from his life. One morning, on the recommendation of an agency, Ethan received Clara Johnson, a discreet young woman with a warm gaze. From the very first moments, Liam seemed to calm down. Clara spoke little, but she had infinite patience. She spent hours reading him stories, helping him with his rehabilitation exercises, and even singing softly to help him fall asleep. Ethan, too distrustful to trust anyone, had installed discreet cameras in the house. He wanted to make sure his son was being treated well. In the first few days, everything seemed perfect. Clara looked after Liam like a guardian angel. But one night, while randomly checking the recordings on his phone, Ethan stumbled upon a heartbreaking scene. On the screen, Clara was kneeling by Liam's bed. She was crying softly, holding the sleeping boy's hand. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she murmured, "I promise you, my little one. I won't make the same mistakes again. I will never abandon you again." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean, never again? Why was this woman crying like that, with so much pain and love?" He rewound the video, searching for a clue. And what he discovered a few minutes later chilled him to the bone. Because Clara was hiding a shocking secret, a secret that linked his past to that of his son. The Malibu sun was rising gently over Ethan Miller's large glass and stone villa. The elegant man in his 30s, impeccably dressed even at home, sipped his coffee overlooking the sea. But behind this facade of a successful businessman, there was a broken father. His son, Liam the 8-year-old, was in his wheelchair next to the bay window, his gaze lost in the waves. Since the accident that claimed his mother's life, Rachel, Liam refused to speak. He no longer smiled. The doctors said he needed to regain a stable emotional connection, but Ethan didn't have the strength to fill that void. So he hired, paid, replaced, never finding the right person. That morning, he was waiting for the new candidate. "Mr. Miller," announced the housekeeper as she opened the door, "the nanny sent by the agency is here." Ethan looked up, without much interest. A young woman entered timidly, Clara Johnson. She was 27 years old, with a slender figure, her chestnut hair hastily tied back, and soft but tired blue eyes. She wore a simple blouse and beige trousers. She looked nervous, but in her eyes there was a strange tenderness, almost maternal. "Hello, Mr. Miller. Thank you for seeing me." "Sit down," he replied coldly. "Have you ever worked with children with disabilities?" "Yes, several times. And I also had a personal experience." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Personal?" "My younger brother was paraplegic. I learned to help him on a daily basis. That's why this position interests me." He nodded, absently flipping through his file. Everything seemed to be in order: good background, solid recommendations, no criminal record. However, he sensed something off different, not the feigned politeness that the others had, but a sincere gentleness. "Very well. I'm entrusting Liam to you for a 1-week trial period. If all goes well, you can stay longer. He needs attention, but also discipline." "I understand, sir. I will do my best." A few hours later, Ethan was remotely watching the images from the indoor cameras, installed for security, from his office. On the screen, he saw Clara approaching Liam, who was still staring at the sea without speaking. She knelt beside him. Do you like watching the waves? She asked softly. No response. You know, when I was little, I was afraid of the sea. But my brother always said that it was just singing. If you listen closely, it's telling you a story. Liam slowly turned his head towards her. It was the first reaction in days. Ethan, behind his screen, felt his heart beat faster. This woman had just done what no one had managed to do for a long time, to reach his son. He crossed his arms, intrigued. Something about Clara intrigued her, a connection inexplicable with Liam. But what he didn't yet know was that this young woman hadn't come out of nowhere. And that their meeting was no accident. The days passed, and against all odds, Clara became the sunshine of the Miller household. Every morning, she arrived early, greeted the employees gently, and prepared breakfast. Liam helped him with his rehabilitation exercises. Her approach was different. She never forced the child to speak or to stand up. She listened to him, spoke to him, told him stories, sometimes funny, sometimes sad, but always true. One morning, while she was reading him a story, Liam timidly looked up at her. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked in a weak voice. Clara felt her throat tighten. It was the first time he had spoken to her. She smiled through her tears. Yes, my darling. I will come back tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow as well. This simple exchange was a game-changer. Ethanho was discreetly observing the scene from the living room cameras. He hadn't seen his son's smile since the accident. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope reborn in this house that had become too silent. But despite this positive change, a mystery hung in the air. Several times, Ethan caught Clara in strange situations. One evening, she entered the room of Rachel, the deceased wife. She stayed there for a long time, caressing a photo frame placed on the dresser. Another day, he saw her stop in front of an old piano, the same one Rachel played. She touched the keys, her eyes closed, as if she knew the melody. Ethan frowned every time. How could this woman seem so familiar with everything that belonged to her wife? One afternoon, when he came home early from the office, he quietly entered the living room. Clara and Liam were laughing loudly, a sound he hadn't heard for years. But when she raised her head and met his gaze, she suddenly turned pale, as if she had seen a ghost. Is everything all right, Clara? He asked, surprised. Yes, sir, just a little tired. She looked away, her hands trembling. Ethan felt an inexplicable discomfort settling in. This woman was hiding something, he was sure of it. But what? That night, while Liam was fast asleep, he decided to open the camera recordings of the day. After midnight, he saw Clara enter his son's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, took a small box out of her pocket and opened it. Inside, a folded and worn photo. Rachel, Ethan's wife, holding a baby in her arms. Clara was crying softly. Then she murmured these words, her voice breaking. Forgive me, Rachel. I should never have disappeared that day. If I had known your son was still here, I would have come back. Ethan sat up abruptly, shocked. Rachel? His wife? What did she mean by that, disappear? And most importantly, how did Clara know his name? His hands trembling, he stopped the video and stared at the frozen screen. The young woman he thought was just a nurse had just opened a door to the past, a past he thought was buried forever. The next morning, the atmosphere in the Miller house was different. Ethan had hardly slept. All night, Clara's words echoed in his head. Forgive me, Rachel. I should never have disappeared. He kept seeing her face, her tears, that photo of his late wife. Every detail now seemed suspicious to him. Who was this woman he had allowed into his home, to be near his son? Clara arrived as usual, her smile gentle, greeting the servants. But when she met Ethan's gaze, she immediately sensed that he knew something. He followed her with his eyes, cold and distant, like a judge ready to pronounce a sentence. Clara, he said suddenly, his voice firm, please come to my office. She swallowed. Of course, Mr. Miller. Once the door was closed, he placed his phone on the table. On the screen, a frozen image, she, crying on Liam's bed holding Rachel's photo. "Explain that to me." Clara turned pale. Her breath caught in her throat. I can explain everything." "So do it. And quickly." "Who are you really?" She remained silent for a moment, tears in her eyes. Then, in an almost inaudible whisper, "I am Rachel's sister." Ethan's eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. Rachel didn't have a sister. She would have told me." "No, she couldn't," Clara replied, sobbing. "Our family fell apart before your wedding. My father disowned me, I left home. Rachel wanted to find me, but I wasn't ready to face the past." Ethan felt his heart beat faster. "And now? You think that after all these years, you can just reappear as a nanny? Without saying a word?" Clara wiped away her tears. "I didn't come for the money, Ethan. I wanted to see Liam. When I learned that my sister had died in that accident, and that her son had survived, I vowed to take care of him. But I didn't know how to approach you without you rejecting me." Silence fell. Ethan remained frozen, unable to utter a word. Everything about her, her gentleness, her kindness, that instinctive tenderness towards Liam, now made sense. But the pain of betrayal remained. "You should have told me, Clara," he said finally, in a trembling voice, "that I might have believed you. But lying, entering here under a false identity, that's unforgivable." "I know," she breathed, "but look at your son. He has started living again." To smile. "Not thanks to me, Ethan, but thanks to the love his mother taught me to give." At that moment, the office door opened gently. It was Liam, in his armchair. "Dad? Why are you yelling at Clara?" he asked in a small, trembling voice. Ethan remained silent. The child moved forward slowly, grabbed Clara's hand, then looked up at her father. "I want her to stay." These simple words hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. He felt the anger melt away, replaced by an emotion he hadn't felt in a long time, gratitude. He looked at Clara, then at her son. And, for the first time since Rachel's death, he felt that a lost connection might have just been found. Evening fell on the Miller villa. After the confrontation, a heavy silence reigned. Ethan had locked himself in his office, rereading over and over the letter Clara had left on the table. A letter soaked in tears, where she had finally told everything. "If you are reading these lines, it means I have found the courage to confess everything. Yes, I am indeed Rachel's sister. And if I disappeared, it's because I bore some responsibility for the accident that cost him his life, **. Those words were enough to make his hands tremble. He continued, shaken. "That evening, Rachel had called me. We had finally reconciled after years of silence. She wanted to introduce me to Liam, and ask for my forgiveness for everything that had happened between us. But I hesitated. I was angry, still hurt. So I refused to come. And she took the car to come and get me, despite the rain. It was on the road, coming towards me, that she had the accident. **. Ethan collapsed in his chair. Memories flooded back, the driving rain, the phone that stopped answering, the hospital announcement. And now, everything made sense. Rachel was dead, trying to repair a broken family bond. The next morning, Clara returned, hesitant. She had decided to confront Ethan, even if it meant leaving forever. But to her surprise, he was waiting for her in the living room, holding the letter in his hands. His gaze was no longer cold, only sad, tired. "You could have told me the truth sooner," he said softly. "I was ashamed," she murmured, "that I hated myself for what I had caused. And when I saw Liam, I understood that it was him I had to ask for forgiveness from." Ethan approached slowly. "Rachel loved you deeply. She often spoke to me of a sister she longed to find. If she were here today, I believe she would forgive you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "And you?" she asked in a whisper. He looked at her for a long time. Then, in a whisper, "Me too." In the following days, the house changed. Ethan spent more time with Liam, finally sharing the moments he had missed. Clara, now without her mask, was there not as an employee, but as a member of the family. One evening, while they were having dinner together, Liam took his father's hand and Clara's. "My mother always said that family is what we choose to fix, not what we are subjected to." Ethan and Clara looked at each other. The little boy, without knowing it, had just closed the last chapter of the past. And in the glow of the sunset, for the first time in years, the Miller house once again echoed with laughter and peace. 6 months later, the Miller villa no longer resembled the cold, silent house it once was. The curtains were wide open, a child's laughter echoed in the garden, and the scent of flowers filled the air. Liam in his armchair, he rolled his wheels on the terrace, throwing a ball towards his father. "Catch, Daddy." Ethan, relaxed for the first time in years, caught the ball while laughing. "You're getting stronger every day, champ." "It's all thanks to Clara," the little boy shouted proudly. Clara arrived right behind them, carrying a tray of orange juice. She wore a peaceful smile, that of a woman who had finally found her place. She had stopped hiding, stopped running from the past. From now on, she lived for the present, near them. Ethan approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You changed our lives, Clara. Without you, I don't know where we would be." She lowered her eyes, moved. "No, Ethan. It was Liam who saved us. He forgave us before any of us." A gentle breeze blew. The flowers in the garden swayed as if they approved of these words. In the distance, Rachel's old piano still stood in the living room. Clara settled in gently, caressed the keys, then played his sister's favorite melody. Liam raised his head, recognizing the notes. "This is the song my mother used to play for me before I went to sleep." "Yes," said Ethan, smiling, "and now your aunt is playing it for you again." The final notes resonated like a promise. The promise that even after the loss, love remains, transforms and heals. The sun slowly set over the ocean. In that golden light, one could see a family reunited by grief, bound together by forgiveness, and guided by the love of a woman who left us too soon, Rachel, whose memory lived on through them. And while little Liam laughed, the two adults understood one essential thing. It wasn't the end of a story, but the beginning of a new life.